Well, we see the basic plot that we've covered so far is Achilles and the Greeks are over in Troy fighting this war to get back Helen and exact revenge. And Achilles gets his nose out of joint because Agamemnon steals his slave girl. You know, I'm sure it was a very deep emotional bond that they shared, and Achilles was offended. So Achilles sits out, says, all right, you know, I'm not going to play in your war anymore. I'm just going to go off in the corner and pout. And he does. And the effect of that is that, well, Achilles is their greatest warrior, and, you know, the Greeks are having a hard time. It's not exactly that clear cut, because actually, after he sits down, the Greeks kind of go on the offensive and start really kicking some butt. So, you know, that complicates that whole, whoa, no, without Achilles, they're nothing. Well, not so much. You know, one guy. What are you going to do? There's a lot of killing also that goes back and forth, which quite frankly is fun. And we'll kind of get to that. But Homer is unsparing in his portrayal of warfare. He describes in excruciating detail, you know, the grisly feeling that comes from taking a spear and stabbing it through somebody's eye socket. And he'll describe, like, you know, the pressure that you have to apply to get it through there, and then the force of hitting the bone in the back of the skull. You know, that level of granular detail. And it's just endless. People die constantly in very specific ways. And the accumulation of that effect is astounding. The misery and the suffering that you see, page after page, starts to take on a kind of otherworldly quality. And the effect of that, I have to say, and I kind of hinted at this the other day, mirrors that of warfare, where the violence of it becomes almost surreal. The effects of it are so all around you that it's giving you a little bit of an insight as to what it's like to be a soldier. And soldiers of all time can relate to this, or have related to this. This book particularly is used very frequently with counseling groups for soldiers coming back from warfare. PTSD is a very real thing, and this deals with that, because soldiers will read through this and will say, yeah, that's kind of what I experienced. Something very familiar to it, because, you know, warfare is not that different. Yes, we punch buttons more often than not in warfare these days, but the emotional stakes are still there. I mean, you can argue as to whether or not the connection is different for somebody who's maybe piloting a drone or something in some far-flung corner of the world, and, well, you know, he's not there, and he doesn't have some guy's brains dripping down his knuckles from stabbing too close. But the moral quandary is still there. The reality of it still strikes through. And this text, this story, resonates. There is one thing I want to check in on. Let me think. Where did that go? Where did it go? The Greeks and the Trojans fight back and forth for quite a while. A lot of it gets a little boring and a little repetitive when you read the whole work. And I would again say that is mirroring the effective warfare. I mean, they're essentially fighting a stalemate. For 10 years, the Greeks are down on the beach, the Trojans are off in the city. Every day. Oh. Get up. Order some Starbucks. They're everywhere. They get dressed, eat a little something, put on the armor, take the sword, wash the remaining brains and goo off of it from the day before, and trudge up the beach. There's a big field. You go, and okay, the Trojans are coming out. Yeah. I guess we all set the same time on our alarm. Okay, let's go. Bam! And they fight for the entire day. At the end of the day, everybody goes back to their corner, had a little dinner, Netflix and chill. That's a day. 10 years of that. No advancement, no nothing. Sometimes the Greeks make it a little closer to the city. Oh, they're going to get there. They're going to get there. They get beat back. Sometimes the Trojans make it all the way down to the beach. Oh, they're going to get there. They're going to get there. Not so much. For the wounded ego of a couple of princes, Paris stole Menelaus' wife. Or alternatively, Menelaus' wife got bored with him and ran off with another guy. The agency is very mysterious in this. Helen is a fascinating character. But I think we can all agree it's a stupid reason to go to war. Objections? No. You can say that this valorizes war, that celebrates war, that maybe it's a little too brutal and grisly, but the brutal and grisly parts make a broader point. The brutal and grisly parts, every time you talk, every time you read about the sound of bones crushing, you have to ask why. For what? It's not necessarily celebrating, although it kind of is in certain ways, but it's pointing out that this is the reality. This is what soldiers do. This is not just what soldiers do, but this is part of the human condition. It is brutal and often for nothing. There's a great little excerpt in Book 8. They have been going back and forth, the two armies, back and forth. There are some protracted episodes where a soldier falls and everybody on either side fights over the body. There's a prevailing concern with funeral rites and the desecration of the bodies. So when a soldier falls, everybody goes to collect them to bring them back to their home base, be it the city or the ships, ritually clean the body and give it a proper funeral. And very often, a lot of people end up dying in the pursuit of bringing that body back. It's a very early version of Saving Private Ryan. The dedication to that gives you a sense of the importance of retaining those bodies so that they can be honored. This is a key value. Just think of, the funeral that Gilgamesh, let's say, hosts for Enkidu, or the concern in Tale of Sinuhe for the funeral rite. This was a very big thing in the ancient world. So people fight over this, but it goes back and forth and back and forth. And every day it's like that. And at one point, there is, at various points, one army is seemingly having the advantage. In other points, it's the other. It's all transitory, and that's significant in itself. But Book 8, there's this little passage that on its own, it's hard to really fit into any larger narrative. But it's a beautiful moment and captures something really crucial to understanding this text. Book 8. And they, in high confidence between the lines of battle, sat down the night long, and their many fires blazed. As when in heaven stars about the bright moon shine conspicuous, when the upper air turns windless, and all the peaks and jutting cliffs are shown, and valleys, and from heaven above the boundless bright air is rent with light, and all the stars are seen, and the shepherd's heart rejoices. So between the ships and streams of Xanthos, in such multitude shone the watchfires of the Trojans burning before Iliad. 1,000 fires were burning on the plain, and by each one sat 50 men in the glow of fires gleaming. And the horses munched their white barley and their grain, standing beside their chariots as they awaited dawn on her fair throne. What is going on here? This is the Greeks, who are at the moment a little bit down. The Trojans did not go back to Troy at the end of the day. They, in fact, set up camp on a hill overlooking the Greek army. Supposedly, 1,000 fires burning. Probably an exaggeration. But a lot of them. Now, they're all sitting there. It's a very dark night, you would figure. And you see all those lights burning in the distance. And that is the enemy. That is the Trojan army resting up. Because what's going to happen in the morning? They're going to go on the attack. And you get this moment, and it's a beautiful image. I mean, you think, oh, it's, campfires in the nighttime. It's this beautiful image that I think everybody can identify with. But each one of those campfires represents a little cluster of people who are going to wake up and start killing and coming after you. So there's this beautiful moment with this very serious undercoating of threat. This serious violence that is right now in abeyance, quieted down. But it will roar up at any time. They can attack at night. Not unheard of. Maybe a social nicety prevents them from doing so. But the peace that they feel looking out at those fires, the beauty of the moment even, is tinged with that threat. They can never, ever relax. This is nighttime. They're supposed to be sleeping. And usually the Trojans comply. They go back to their city. You know, war is a 9-to-5 gig for them. But here, there's something eerie going on. And I can't help, whenever I read this, and why I think it's so significant, I can't help but think of life in general. Because, as I said, the war itself is kind of used as a metaphor for human life. It is awfully brutal. But here you have this image, not of war, but of potential war. Violence just under the surface. You can see it bubbling very slightly underneath there. That's life in the ancient world. That's life in a tribal culture where brutal things can happen at any moment. And you just got to expect it. And it's the expectation that is somehow even more draining. Because while they're staring at these watchfires, they're not sleeping. It would be smart to try, because war can be rather draining. But they're not resting. They're sitting there, they're staring. It's a moment of great beauty, but they know that any minute it can turn deadly. That's the culture they live in. That's the reality of this brutal, ancient, barbaric world. It's a very warlike world. Everything can trigger a fight. Even the stupidest stuff will lead to everybody being swept up in a cataclysm of violence, a holocaust. So in that one image, you can see this two layers of beauty and ugliness, and the sense of danger that can just, on a second, twist from one to the other. It also, you know, it's a nice little moment of suspense, although suspense really isn't Homer's thing, quite honestly. Again, with Fate, he tells you everything that's going to happen. There's really no, oh, gee, spoiler alert. There's none of that. But in this moment, you can feel all those little hairs on the back of your neck. Twin.